What's up, Captains? Today's episode is brought to you by my favorite supplement and my guest's favorite supplement, Magnesium Breakthrough. This stuff works like gangbusters. And Alex talks about on the show how he used magnesium to not only help cure his insomnia, but also why he continues to use it and recommend it to his clients is that it dramatically reduces your stress response. He mentioned on the show one of the first things he noticed from taking magnesium was that he no longer got road rage when people cut him off. And let me tell you, you will notice the same because one of the biggest reasons why I recommend magnesium is that it dramatically improves your body's ability to handle stress, aka you respond to stress a lot better. So when a stressful situation arises, you still might feel those same feelings of stress or anger if somebody cuts you off, but your response to those situations is dramatically improved. You feel much more calm and you don't feel the need to react to those situations anymore. And not only that, but it also improves your deep sleep. And there's a whole other host of benefits about magnesium, but specifically we talk about on today's podcast about the benefits for sleep and stress. And why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough is that it combines 7 different forms of bioavailable magnesium. Because the problem with store-bought brands is that even if you are supplementing with magnesium, you're probably only getting 1, maybe 2 forms if you're lucky, but they're probably not very good forms. Specifically, what you want to look out for is magnesium oxide. This is the one that's prevalent in most of the over-the-counter supplements because it's the cheapest. But because it's the cheapest, it's also the poorest absorbed, and your body only absorbs about 5% of it. So you're really wasting your money if you use magnesium oxide. You want the full spectrum of magnesium to basically cover all your bases with magnesium supplementation because it plays a role in over 300 different bodily functions. And if you're only getting 1 poorly absorbed form, you're not getting the benefit of having all those 300 different functions optimized. And one of the reasons why you need to supplement with magnesium instead of just getting it through your diet is our soils have been depleted over the years, something that we also mentioned on the podcast, of essential minerals like magnesium. So it's very difficult to get not only the recommended daily intake of magnesium, but to have optimal levels of magnesium through diet alone. I mean, seriously, when was the last time you had a handful of Brazil nuts? Probably not very often. So that's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough. And if you want the hookup on this stuff, you can head over to bioptimizers.com. The link will be in the show notes, and use code Captain Morgan to save some money on my favorite supplement. And let me tell you guys, this is truly a game changer. You will notice the results. And if you don't, Bioptimizers offers a 360-day, I believe it's that long, or 90-day, whatever. Doesn't matter because you're not going to want to return it, but they offer a money-back guarantee. So if you take this stuff and your stress isn't immediately reduced, you can send it back, but you're not going to want to. Again, that's bioptimizers.com and use code Captain Morgan to save some money. All right, now on to today's interview with Alex Bernier. Hello, and welcome aboard another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. This is your captain speaking, Taylor Morgan. On today's episode, our special guest is Alex Bernier. Alex is the founder of the online school of exercise with 11 years of experience at helping others and over 20 at training himself. His mission is to help his students achieve sovereign fitness, a state of independence regarding all workout-related matters. All this came after he beat a lifetime of recurring bouts of insomnia by following unconventional or pseudo-scientific advice. And I hate that we have to call it that. That's just ridiculous, right?
Yeah, but that's what it's labeled as. And
I know.
So that's why.
It's crazy. So let's start there because this is something I'm very passionate about as well. And probably the thing that I talk about most is the importance of sleep, which you're obviously very familiar with. So first discuss insomnia. Like, what was that experience like?
Well, ever since I could remember as a young kid, I just had trouble sleeping. Going to bed was always an ordeal. I knew that, especially if I went at a sleepover or even at my own house, nighttime came, I was tired. It's not like I wasn't tired, but then I would get to bed and then boom, my brain just kicks on overdrive and all of a sudden have the most creative energy I've had all day and I can't fall asleep. It's just like lying down, trying to close my eyes, just tossing and turning, and then by like 4 in the morning, I would sort of fall asleep, but not really. You know, those kind of very, very superficial sleep where I couldn't even tell if I was looking at the ceiling of my room or if it was a dream. And then, you know, usually school or hockey practice started at 6, 7. So I would be up and just kind of zombie my way through the morning. And that was every day, pretty much.
Man, every day. I can't even imagine what that would be like. Now, I had sleep issues when I was in the Marine Corps, but it wasn't like insomnia. So it wasn't that bad. What are some of the negative side effects that came along with that?
Well, mostly how you felt the next morning. You know, it was like I had an anvil for a brain. My head was super heavy. It was sort of a brain fog. I was moody. I wasn't talkative. I dreaded going to school, but then so did we all, or most of us at least. And but then just when I got to school, I wanted to sleep. I would often fall asleep in class. I had no focus, no attention. I wasn't interested. But then, you know, then by the time I would have my snack at 10 in the morning, and it's another sugary snack, then I'd be good for until lunch, have lunch, and then be good for 1 or 2, but then crash again. And it was just like these ups and downs of energy throughout the day. But the mornings were by far the worst.
Yeah, I think a lot of those things that you mentioned, I think a lot of people don't always connect that with poor sleep. Because I ask people all the time, like, how are you sleeping? And they say, oh, fine. And then it's like, okay, well, are you really sleeping fine? Like not just how many hours, like you think you're sleeping 7 hours, but what's the quality of that sleep? Mm-hmm. Do you struggle to fall asleep? Do you have trouble staying asleep? Do you feel groggy in the morning? Do you not want to get up out of bed? Do you rely on coffee? And then I think sometimes they don't correlate these other things that are just happening throughout their day. I think they view them as normal just because they've had poor sleep for so long. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I thought that was normal. I thought poor sleep was normal. You know, I didn't really question. Nobody told me. It's like, no, you're not sleeping. That's something's going on. Maybe it's the bowl of cereals that you're eating before going to bed or all the sugar, you know? So, but for me it was normal. And it was just, that's life. My sleep sucks. And I never questioned it. So it was a big deal for me.
So knowing what you know now, what do you think was the cause of your insomnia back then?
Oh, it was, first of all the sugar that I was eating. You know, breakfast cereal a bowl of breakfast cereal before bed. A lot of milk, a lot of dairy. And I'm not necessarily against milk, but I was just having way too much of it, especially at night. And so I would get to bed and just be, you know, full of energy. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, my diet was terrible. A lot of processed food. That was probably perhaps what started it all. Just because I was eating so much processed food, you know, not a lot of whole foods. And so it just created this vicious cycle.
Were you eating gluten at the time?
Oh yeah. Toast in the morning, Eggos sometimes in the morning, you know, it was just like horrible, full of grain, full of sugar.
Yeah. And so a lot of people don't understand this, but gluten is bad on its own. Dairy can potentially be bad on its own. But the combination of the two can also potentially be very detrimental, because even if you're not gluten intolerant, or if you have celiac, you certainly shouldn't be eating any gluten. But even if you're not gluten intolerant, there is another protein in gluten called gliadin. And that, if you consume that over a long period of time, like if you consume that every single day, which is what unfortunately most people do, that can cause your gut, in addition to the gluten, to become leaky, essentially. And so it basically pokes holes in the lining of your gut. And then even if you're not lactose intolerant, you can then start to get some of the symptoms of lactose intolerance, like bloating or acne or, you know, sleep issues. Yeah. And so that
I had them all. I had all 3 of those.
Exactly. Yeah. So that combo, especially in those teenage years, I think a lot of people push past that. So what did you do first, what was the advice that you were given when you had insomnia?
Well, it was after I graduated from university. I had gotten a personal training job at a very good gym in Montreal. So I started having clients. I was really into the making my own schedule thing. And so, but a lot of these clients were at 6 a.m. So after school, you know, after I was in school, I had nothing else. That was my life starting. So those 6 a.m. clients, I couldn't be a zombie, but then I would be not sleeping the night before and then going to it. So that's when I was like, okay, I got to get my life together. I got to start, taking action for this. And I went to a strength coaching seminar with Charles Poliquin in New York.
Oh, the
legend. The legend. And that was an amazing seminar, but he brought up sleep, advising his athletes on improving their sleep and how he did it. And then it was the first time I was like, okay, there's actually something you can do about this. There are things causing my lack of sleep, and there are actions that I can take to reverse it. So that was my first sort of aha moment. And, I applied what he taught, and it worked. It took a while. I needed a lot of patience. I thought it was going to work right away. So it was very frustrating at first. But then, after a year and a half of trying, I just started getting the best sleep of my life, where my head would hit the pillow and I would just fall asleep right away, which never happened before. So it was really, I owe it all to Charles Poliquin and all the advice and the people that he referred me to in order to fix it, because it took many different pieces, but it got done.
Well, before we dive into what some of those things were that fixed your insomnia, I want to recommend everybody or anybody who's listening that is a fan of strength and conditioning or, working out or trying to gain muscle. Charles Poliquin is one of the best strength and conditioning coaches of all time. So if you're interested in that realm at all, I would highly recommend looking into his work. And what I like about him most is that he goes deeper than just the workouts. Like for him, it's not about, tweaking this little thing. Like, yes, he's good at doing those sort of things for the specific movements, but also, like you mentioned, the sleep. And I know he's big on supplements and the specific dosage of different supplements and how that can work best for you, and nutrition as well. And so he takes this more holistic approach, which I believe is why he was one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it worked. I mean, everything that he taught me ended up working. I just had to be patient for it and sort of explore and feel and adjust. But in the end, it's true, the holistic approach was the way to go.
So let's get into that now. What was the advice that he gave you?
Well, first of all, it's like you said, gluten, dairy. I had no idea. I was consuming both mindlessly. And so what I did is I just removed them completely to see how it felt. So the first thing I noticed was the bloating. I was all bloated all the time. And so the bloating was gone almost overnight when I stopped eating both of those things or drinking milk. Mm-hmm. And he talked about stress a lot. So it was not only taking magnesium, for instance, which is the anti-stress nutrient, which helped a lot, but also removing or addressing other sources of stress in your life. So, and I'm using this as an example. That's not what the issue was at the time, but you're in a bad relationship. You hate your job. There's this, there's that. You got to, make some decisions about your life that could potentially remove those silent stressors, silent but constant stressors. So I moved my life around. I made some decisions. I stopped going out. I stopped partying. I was partying a lot because of university and you're young, but I was overdoing it way too much. And so I just kind of removed myself from that scene completely, which got me a lot of criticism from the people I was partying with, and
peer
it's
pressure.
Tough because peer pressure. But it was like on those Fridays and Saturdays, it's like, no, I'm going to focus. I'm going to stay home, start, focusing on my business and everything. And those were hard decisions to take at the time because all your friends are out, but you're staying inside. So, but then obviously not getting shit faced on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then sometimes Sunday, you start your week on a higher note, right? So, just that one weekend that I would be going out or extended weekend would affect me for the rest of my week where I wasn't going out because I was recovering. And so I was catching up on sleep. And so that just fueled, again, the vicious cycle. So stop all forms of partying. I was still going out. I still had a social life, but just not, not the partying years. I had to grow out of those. And so that's it. And, because I was waking up early because of my clients, it sort of, the cycle just kind of happened on its own. And I would wake up before my alarm. I didn't even need an alarm anymore. And then I would get to bed. It'd be the evening and I would start feeling tired and then get to bed and then fall asleep right away. So my circadian rhythms were in tune for the first time, maybe in my life or in a very, very long time.
Before we get into what it feels like to finally get your circadian rhythm on track, You brought up magnesium, which is something that I highly recommend to people as well. And this episode is actually sponsored by my favorite magnesium brand. But I want to clarify that you can't just take magnesium and expect your stress to go away. Like you mentioned the relationships and the work. Taking magnesium will help you to better control your response to stress, but it doesn't alleviate what's happening, obviously. So in those types of situations, you have to learn how to, usually it's some form of communication, whether that's in your relationships or with your boss at work, whatever it is, you got to remove yourself from that if you can. And then all these different supplements like magnesium, especially, and breath work can do a lot, which I know you're big on breath work, which we're going to talk about too. Mm-hmm. But when you finally got your circadian rhythm in check and you're going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, what did that feel like?
It was the best thing in the world, for real. Honestly, all the great experiences I've had in my life don't compare to what it's like to have just normal sleep, because every night for 20 years, I would go to bed knowing that, here we go. Like, I'm going to be lying down with nothing happening. But now it was just, I would get tired, go to bed and fall asleep, wake up fresh, just get out of bed and start my day. No brain fog and constant energy. So the energy starts high, it increases in the morning and then it reaches a plateau and it doesn't drop. So I used to have to take a nap at the gym that I worked at 10 a.m. after all my morning clients because I was just done. But then once I fixed my sleep, I didn't have to take a nap anymore. I rarely take naps. When I do, it's 10 minutes at most. And I used to, but not good naps, not power naps. I used to need like 3-hour naps where you wake up and you don't know where you are in the world kind of thing or in time, right? So those were completely gone. And then it was just, I was sharper with my clients, just even how I talk to them, coming up with solutions if there's a problem happening, in the moment. I was just a lot more focused. And then the gains at the gym, the strength gains, the muscle gain, getting leaner. It was all so much easier, a lot easier than what I had gotten at that time. It felt like I was working, pushing a boulder up a hill kind of thing. And then afterwards, it all just came naturally. Obviously, I had to work for it. It's not like it just magically appeared, but the results came faster.
Yeah. And this is what I try to tell people. Like, once you optimize your sleep, literally everything else in your life starts to improve. Yeah. The workout example, a lot of people don't understand that working out doesn't actually make you stronger. Lifting weights and exercising, that actually makes you weaker in the moment because you're breaking down the muscle fibers. When you get stronger is when you recover, AKA when you sleep. So if you're getting horrible sleep, your body's not going to be able to recover itself. And so, get better sleep, you start making better gains. Same thing with energy levels. People are relying on coffee to get them through the day. That's just artificial energy. It's borrowing energy from another time. And then you just need more coffee and more coffee. You feel more tired. It's just this cycle. And then the cognitive benefits too. Like you mentioned, the focus, the creativity, no brain fog,
no, night and day. It's night and day. How I felt in my head, it's like, you're just there now. It's not just like, you're not a zombie in the morning. And so it was just so significant that now sleep is sacred for me, and then like most of my decisions, whether it's training, nutrition, or, if I go out or not, are now tailored for my sleep. It's like, okay, well, how will this affect my sleep? Because I feel if I go out, let's say I get wasted, occasionally, I'll feel it for 3 or 4 days where I'm not as productive as I could be for my business and growing my business. So for me, it's a big no-no. And I try to limit those nights.
Oh yeah, me too. And that's one of the big things I teach. Like, once you learn to prioritize your sleep, like everything else falls into place because the good sleep is the baseline, right? Yeah. So moving on, you and I have a similar story here. We both went to work at a gym in the Middle East. I was in Saudi Arabia. You were in Dubai. Tell us about that experience.
Well, that was, again, shortly, maybe 8-9 months after I graduated from university, maybe 5-6 months into starting to fix my sleep. And my mentor at the gym that I worked at in Montreal, which was like the equivalent of a corporate job. So it was a very expensive gym. It was a high-end health club. So there was plenty of wealthy members. So as a personal trainer, it's amazing because people can afford your services. They can afford to buy a month's worth of services.
Yeah.
And so it was a great place to learn, but it was still very corporate in the sense that you had all these meetings and you have to hit your numbers and everything. And I wasn't liking it. My mentor there were a lot of students from the Middle East, from Dubai, from Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, that would come and study in Montreal, and they would go to that gym. So we met a lot of people from the Middle East, and he went first with one of his clients. And then 6 months later, he's like, "Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yep." Dropped everything, gave my 2 weeks. It took a few months before actually going there, but it was a whole process. And I was the first employee of an athletic center opening in Dubai. So that was just an incredible experience. It didn't work out the way I thought it would. I thought I was going to go live there forever and just make millions of dollars there, but it didn't work out. But the experience was invaluable for me. And it got me on, to start really my own business when I got back home after.
Yeah. So now let's get into that. Tell us about what you're doing now.
So I started a website called the Online School of Exercise. At first, it was a website for, I had a small studio space in Montreal, and I was seeing my clients there. So I created a website to exchange form videos, workouts, whatever media I had to exchange with them. And eventually I made a client that was from across town. So he didn't come and train at my space. He trained at his own gym, but I was still supervising it. And I was using the same website that I was using with my clients. And what was fun with him was that I didn't have to be at the gym at the time that he worked out at. So I was really digging it. And so eventually through Twitter, which was really the platform where I started to grow, I made my first client in New York. And then now I have clients all over the world, Europe, India, South America, parts of Asia. So it's just been incredible. And I do strength coaching, rehab if people are in pain. So it's just all the fitness services that I would do in my commercial space, and now are done, 95% of them are done online. And so since the pandemic, it's been 100% of my business.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love having an online thing too, is because I used to be a CrossFit coach. So it's like in-person personal training. And now it's like you can work from wherever you want. It's a great feeling. And I know this is something you didn't mention, but I know that you're a big proponent of proper breathing mechanics, right?
Absolutely.
Talk to us about why that is so important.
Well, breathing is the most regulated function in our body, right? It's life or death, and it's controlled by the oldest part of our brains, the brain stem, which controls all our subconscious functions, heart rate, focus, attention. So it's all in the same place. So breathing is really the great equalizer. If you're stressed and you simply focus on your breathing, you're going to be able to calm your body. If you're sort of lethargic, you don't have a lot of energy, breathing can actually increase your energy without stressing you. So just because it targets that part of the brain that controls all the unconscious functions, including attention, including thoughts, including posture. So by breathing, you're stimulating that part of the brain, and then you're stimulating all those other functions at the same time. So it's just a really quick access tool to raise your focus and calm your body at once.
So let me ask you this, because I've been kind of going back and forth on this as well. What is more important, proper breathing mechanics or sleep? Because they both kind of, intertwine, because nasal breathing plays such a huge role in quality of sleep and stress reduction. But then sleep plays obviously a huge role in everything as well. So if you had to pick one thing, what would you say would be more important to understand first, proper breathing or sleep?
Well, that's a good question. And would definitely, if I was working with a client, it would depend on the context of how they are, right? So is their sleep terrible? Is their breath terrible? Is their breath, I would try to assess what's more important for the person. But I started addressing sleep before I even thought about my breath, and it worked out fine. But then maybe had I started with the breath, would I have gotten an easier time fixing my sleep, because it's just so powerful. So it's a chicken or the egg kind of thing. Both have value, but I would say focus on sleep, because breathing could be a part of that protocol for you. So make sleep your priority, but then consider breathing as a means to achieve better sleep. Yeah.
So let's talk about that, because like you mentioned, once you understand how to control your breath, you can literally control your state. You can ramp yourself up if you're feeling down, or if you're about to go for a big lift, or if you need that little extra boost, you're feeling that, 2:30 a.m. or 2:30 p.m. feeling after lunch, or you could wind yourself down. Like if you're feeling too stressed out, you can literally control your body's stress response. So let's first discuss how and when you would want to do the sympathetically activating breathing, how you could ramp yourself up.
Well, I'm always a big fan of box breathing. So controlling the pace of your breath. So let's say, I don't have the visuals with me, but so take 4 seconds to inhale, hold 4 seconds at the top, take 4 seconds to exhale, and then hold 4 seconds at the bottom. And so just by doing that, just by controlling the pace at which the muscles are contracting and lengthening, you're getting that energized state, because you're affecting how oxygen is absorbed in your body. So there's all sorts of adaptations that happen, and one of them is that boost of energy. So simple paced breathing. You don't even have to do 4-4-4-4. It could be, you play around with it, take longer pauses in between the inhale and the exhale. There's infinite possibilities.
Before, we probably should have discussed nasal breathing specifically and the difference between that and being a mouth breather.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, your nose is just better equipped to inhale oxygen. So you have filters that will cool the air or warm the air so that it gets better absorbed in your lungs. You have, there's a molecule called nitric oxide that's produced in your nose, and that also increases the oxygen absorption by the lungs. So if you've got that molecule in the air that you're breathing, there's going to be more oxygen absorbed at lung level. So, and just your mouth doesn't have that. Your mouth is a secondary breathing entry, but it's not equipped to purify the air, to warm the air, to add the nitric oxide molecule to it. And so, and if anything, it uses mostly your neck muscles, your traps, your chest, because it's all coming from here. And so you create all this tension, whereas nasal breathing uses more diaphragm and all the other muscles as well, but more importantly, more diaphragm. So your chest can expand bigger and get, again, just more oxygen. So if you have more resources, more life force, which is oxygen, then your just overall performance is going to increase.
Plus, you just look ridiculous as a mouth breather.
Yeah,
right?
sound ridiculous.
When I was in the Marine Corps in boot camp, people would get yelled at all the time for being a mouth breather. And I don't think the drill instructors knew, like, physiologically the effects of mouth breathing. Yeah. I think they just thought, like, you look ridiculous, close your damn mouth, And you mentioned nitric oxide, and for all the guys listening out there, nitric oxide increases vascularity. So for workouts, that's obviously good because everybody wants to see those nice veins in the forearms and the biceps. It's a good aesthetic look. And then also for bedtime, right? If it increases vascularity in your veins, that's obviously going to help in sexual performance.
Absolutely. And speaking of workouts, the first time I tried nose breathing during a workout, I could only do a few sets, and then I would have automatically go to mouth breathing. And then after 2, 3, 4 weeks, I was able to go through the full workout without opening my mouth, which was crazy. So I really saw the adaptation. And again, you're so grounded when you're nose breathing throughout the whole workout. It's like you're in a completely different state. And so that's why now it's like strictly nose breathing at 99% of the time.
Yeah. And then if you need to go like that extra 1% to kick it up a notch, then you have that mouth breathing in your back pocket to get more oxygen quicker. But that's it. I say the same thing. Like you should be working out, breathing through your nose all the time, unless, you're in a competition and you're sprinting to the finish line, because of those performance benefits, the nitric oxide, obviously. But then when you can control your breathing during a workout, that improves your whole workout. Because a lot of people, because as a CrossFit coach, a lot of people burn themselves out because they've never done CrossFit before. And then they go into a workout and they're like, oh, I can do squats and I can run and I can jump on a box. But then when you combine those together, it's something completely different. And so they burn themselves out. But if they were to understand how to control their breathing, they could control their pace in the workout.
Absolutely. It's an important tool. And once you learn how to master it, harvest it. It's just and it's right away, and clients tell me, it's like, oh, I really do feel a difference when they start applying that, when they start breathing through their nose. It changes everything.
Yeah. And guys, Alex said that it took him 4 to 6 weeks for it to become like second nature, like natural.
Yeah. To go through my full workout without breathing through my mouth. So it started off a few sets, and then gradually, as I kept trying, eventually it's like it could be diaphragm strength, it could be abdominal strength that you develop, but it's just you're able to sustain the oxygen demand of a set of squat or whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. It took me a couple months for it to just feel normal. And like even just this morning, I did a full workout with running and back squats in it and some pull-ups all through the nose. And it felt fine because I understand how to control my breathing. But when I first started, it was very difficult, like you mentioned, because you're so used to breathing through your mouth. It feels like your nostrils are closing in because there's no nitric oxide, because the nitric oxide produced literally it helps expand your nostrils. So more oxygen gets in. But Absolutely. If you're just starting out, that's very difficult, and it feels like it sucks in the moment. But let me tell you guys, just keep doing it. Slow yourself down so you can only breathe through your nose. If you feel like you have to breathe through your mouth, slow down, because 4 to 6 weeks later, it will be worth it. It is amazing.
Life-changing.
Seriously. Not just in workouts, but in everyday life too. And so now let's talk about how we can reduce our stress and calm ourselves down if if somebody cuts us off in traffic and we're feeling that stress response. What can we do to reduce that?
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because the first effect that I noticed of magnesium was road rage on the, I don't have bad road rage, but I'll swear at people, I'll get angry, and it's just angry for the dumbest reasons too. It's like, oh, you cut me off. Okay. Like, big deal, but I just started noticing that like things were happening, and I was just like, I was still angry, but just more in control. And I just didn't respond. And it's like, oh, what's going on? And so that was really the first thing that changed. So magnesium is a very important tool to try to beat your stress, because when your body produces cortisol, the stress hormone, it then uses magnesium to clear it out. So if you're always stressing, but you don't have any more magnesium to clear all the cortisol, you're just going to be in a endless cycle of stress. And so by adding magnesium, and for most people, you have to take it as a supplement, because your diet is garbage. Your digestive system is not absorbing magnesium from food, and most food today doesn't have a lot of magnesium in it anymore.
Or
it's
soil has been depleted.
That's it, exactly. So supplements do help, and it's you take a larger dose at the beginning, and eventually you don't have to take it anymore, or you very rarely take it. But that's it. So magnesium is number one thing. Meditation, mindful meditation helped me a lot. It's not for everybody. It's not, not everybody gets into it, but I found the app Headspace, and that was one that really connected with me. And it kind of connected me to my breath for the first time before I even knew what nose breathing was. It just, made me do these 10, 20, 30, and then even eventually 60-minute sessions of just sitting, watching feeling myself breathe. But then again, it was like you can feel the click after the session. Well, that was a huge change for me. And then afterwards, again, fixing your diet, weightlifting, these things are constant forces that will just help everything, all your hormones, all your neurotransmitters fall back into place.
What about specific breathing techniques? What can we do with our breath to reduce that stress response?
Well, pranayama is a very good, it's got all sorts of different exercises that you can do. So box breathing, like I said. There's another one where you take a deep nose inhale, and then quarter breath exhales and inhales. So it's and then you go for as long as you can. I timed myself for 3 minutes. That was the longest I could do, but it's just like, so then it's short
on an inhale.
So big inhale, and then exhale, but exhale like 10-15%,
okay.
And then back up. And then you're always sort of pumping up and down for as long as you can. So it's like you get oxygen in, but then you don't fully exhale your oxygen, and then you inhale right away. So it just stimulates your brainstem in a different way. And the Wim Hof technique is incredible. That's not nose breathing, but it's a different kind of mouth breathing. But he makes you use your stomach and your core. He's wonderful, and a lot of it is free. So I definitely suggest checking out Wim Hof, is it Wim or Wim Hof?
Wim, W-I-M.
Wim Hof, yeah.
Yep.
So that's it. He's great.
Do you recommend that for stress?
Oh yeah, look, stress, depression, the up, the down. Just like I said, it's the great equalizer. So whether you're up or two up or two down, it helps you bring you into that neutral state. So it won't fix your problems. It won't eliminate your problems for you. But instead of being stuck in your thought or being stuck in your lethargy, you're going to be aware, you're going to be present. And then in that moment, you can decide, okay, well, either act on it or do something about it. You're just going to get clarity in your mind that's going to show you what the next step is. That's what I found for me, at least. Yeah.
Speaking of clarity, I want to gain some clarification on this because I don't recommend Wim Hof breathing if you're stressed out. But so I think there might be multiple types of Wim Hof breathing, but the two types that I know of are like when you're about to get into an ice bath, you're standing up, you're breathing into the shoulders, in through the mouth, very quickly to activate the sympathetic nervous system to kind of hype you up, get you ready to go in. And then there's the type where you're lying down on the floor and you're breathing, and that is a completely different response that I would recommend for stress. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, that's the one where it's like circular breathing.
Okay. Yeah.
I do it lying down. So yeah, but no, it's not for the ice bath one, which he also does. But no, I think that the second method you mentioned, it does two things. It calms you, and then you're more focused after. I find most breathing exercises have that same effect. It's just about changing it and then doing different kinds to get all your breathing functions.
Yeah. And guys, I wouldn't recommend just trying this on your own. I would at least spend, I don't know, maybe a half hour watching YouTube videos or reading books if you can. Don't just try to do it on your own because it's a little complicated. It's not super complicated, but you got to know the specific procedure on how to do it. Right. And if you can do it in a group setting, I found that to be way more powerful anyways, even virtually. Some virtual breathing sessions that I've done have been great, very introspective. And I believe that they can actually release DMT in your brain, which is what's the word I'm trying to think of? Psychoactive psychedelic compound. You don't get high when you're breathing like that. Well, I guess you can if you take it, if you go for a while and you know what you're doing, but it feels very different. And you'll see if you do it. All right. Coming up to the end here, I want to talk on the harmful effects of sitting, something I know that you talk about as well, and posture. So let's talk about this because the majority of all of my clients are entrepreneurs, which obviously requires a lot of sitting behind a computer, hunched over all day. So talk to us about why sitting is the new smoking.
Right. Well, here's what I see in my assessment. So when somebody comes to me, they've got lower back pain, they've got hip pain, some kind of lower body issue, even neck and shoulder. First thing I do is assess their hamstrings and their glutes. If they tell me that they have a very seated lifestyle, because what happens is that, and that's only one of the things that happens, but you sit on a chair. So you're compressing your glutes and your hamstring against the chair. And so you're cutting circulation of blood, oxygen, nutrients, and you sit like that for, all day. So when you get up, it's like the muscles are numb, and compound that over years, those muscles just get disconnected from the system because they've been outsourced to the chair. Their job has been outsourced to the chair. So your brain disconnects them. And I see it in my assessment where I'll do a simple hamstring exercise. And sometimes just one set is enough to have their legs shake for 10 minutes after.
Wow.
So it's like you wake the muscles up again. And the hamstrings and the glutes are asleep. That's the number one thing. And those are your most powerful muscles, some of the most powerful muscles in your body. And when you're standing, these are the muscles that are keeping you upright. They're sort of, it's at the center of your moving universe. So if they're weak, if they're unable to support your weight, you're going to have big issues because your legs won't be able to absorb your body weight when you're standing or let alone moving.
What do you think the biggest negative side effect of too much prolonged sitting is?
Well, it's the body we're created to move, right? And when we're inactive for too long, just all our physiological systems start to crash, and sitting kind of just perpetuates that. You're in this weird transition where it's not a movement, but you're still some muscles are still working and some are getting weaker. So it just creates all these dysfunctions in your body on a muscular level, but then on a physiological level too, because your brain is stimulated by movement or by gravity on your spine, so just standing. And when you're sitting, you don't get as much stimulation, so your brain doesn't work as well as it could. And an MRI study found that you reduce the range of motion of your diaphragm by 1/3, so you get less oxygen in. And again, if you have less oxygen, all your tissues in your brain will not be working at full capacity. So it's just, all in all, for performance, it's not a great position to stay in. And I much prefer standing most of the day and then sitting occasionally than the other way around. And I'm way more tired at the end of my day if I've walked during the day, if I stood during the day, than if I drove for 4 to 6 hours kind of thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they might be aware that sitting all day is bad. At least I hope a lot of people are. And I think they might be aware of the physiological benefits, or not the benefits, the physical side effects, like low back pain specifically. I don't remember the percentage, but I think it's something like, I don't know, 80% of Americans suffer from low back pain or something like that. Yeah, and I think a lot of it can be contributed to not just the sitting, but the lack of movement specifically. And I think a lot of people miss the neurological side effects of sitting. Like you mentioned, your diaphragm is reduced by 1/3, not actually reduced, but the capacity
range of motion.
Yeah, there you go, is reduced by 1/3. So you get less oxygen to the brain, and also less blood flow. Because if you're just sitting stationary for the whole day, you're not getting that blood flow. So I tell people all the time, like, just get up and move your body, breathe, get the blood flow back. You'll feel better. You'll be able to concentrate more. So
it's 3 to 5 minutes for every hour that you're seated. So you want to just be up for, I think it was measured at 3 to 5 minutes is enough to counter that full hour of sitting that you just did. So it's really nothing. Just even getting up and walking around, but sometimes you don't think about it. You're so absorbed by your work, and you have to understand that there's a real impact on your hips, on your glutes, on your brain too, like you mentioned.
Yeah. So if you're feeling any sort of, like, if you're sitting down working on the computer and you're feeling like you're starting to lose focus, or anything like that, and you've been sitting for a while, do what Alex said. Get up, move around, breathe a little bit, and then come back. I promise you will be more focused and able to be more productive than if you would have just sat down and tried to grind through the whole thing,
or have another coffee or something. Yeah. Exactly. No, for real.
Yeah.
And it's very fast.
Yeah.
Fast acting.
Yes. Yeah. I always like to say your default state should be movement. Not just standing, not just sitting, because standing all day is not great either. It's the combination of movement, right? So if you have a standing desk, make sure that you're not just standing all day. Make sure that you're moving around. You do some squats, some lunges. You could get one of those walking treadmills that you could put under. So at least you're walking while you're working. There's so many hacks, but as long as you're not just standing or sitting still, right? It's movement.
That's it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that also obviously helps with burning calories and weight loss, right?
Yeah, and energy at the end of the day, because you've burnt more energy just standing and moving than, so you get to bed and you're actually tired. Your body's like, okay, I need to rest. But if you've been sitting for 8 hours and then you go back home and you sit for another 4 hours, then you're going to have more energy than you should at night.
Exactly. So let's talk about posture now. How does sitting all day affect posture?
Well, it's just, again, you weaken the center pieces of your posture, your glutes and your hamstrings. So when you're standing, these muscles are weak. They're not doing their work anymore. So you're just unsupported. So you're going to expend a lot more energy trying to fix that, to stabilize yourself. And so what ends up happening is that maybe you'll start developing knee pain or another weird pain because your legs aren't doing their work. And also, if you're sitting, you're probably doing something, driving, typing, your arms are forward, right? Your head is closer to the screen. So it just pulls everything forward. And what ends up happening is that the muscles in your back lengthen, they get weak. So, all the rotator cuff, the scapular muscles, even the lats, and then the front gets sort of tight and stronger. It's not really strong, but because they're always forward, it creates a lot of tension here. So it just pulls everything forward, including your head. And then it perpetuates the cycle of low back pain or just poor lower body performance.
And then especially if you're a dude and you work out chest 3 times a week, that's going to make it even worse. And you're going to be rolled forward and your back is going to be hunched. And combine that with being on your phone for who knows how long a day, that's just a bad scenario. So if somebody does have this sort of shoulders rolled forward, hunched posture, either from sitting, being on your phone all day, what can we do about that?
Well, actually, there's a lot of different things to address. First, I would look at the state of their shoulder blades, their shoulder blade muscles, like the rotator cuff. I find that a lot of people in my assessments fail to do 12 external rotation in the side lying position, so that they can't even externally rotate a 3-pound, 5-pound weight, right? So they've got no outward strength like that. So their internal rotators are strong, but their external rotators are weak. So just by addressing that, it won't fix everything, but it does a big difference on the joint. So I would try to find which muscles have been weakened by your lifestyle. And usually you'll find shoulder blade muscles, the glutes, hamstrings, and the feet.
Yeah, the feet is huge. Wow, I'm glad you brought this up. Because if usually whatever pain you have, if it's a lower body pain or even a back pain, it might be contributed back to the feet because that's where everything starts. So if you don't have a good foot position, you're going to have a bad knee position. And if you have a bad knee position, you're going to have bad hips, and bad hips is going to disalign your spine. And then it's going to make you all cattywampus. So let's talk about feet and foot positioning and what people can do to strengthen their feet. I think, would you agree that flat feet is usually what contributes most to these issues and the valgus knee cave?
Yeah, I see a lot of them. I find a lot of them in my assessments. But then it's not just flat feet. It's also some people are towards the outside. So it's like the opposite of flat arches. And then a lot of people have what we call disharmonic feet. So the weight on the left is going to be completely different than the weight on the left. So sometimes they'll have flat feet on one and then the other one on the on the other foot. So it's just like right away, you know that when their foot lands, when they walk, the left side and the right side of their bodies are not absorbing the shock the same way. And so you can kind of trace that all the way back up. But you're right, everything starts at the feet.
So this is something that I feel like is not talked about often. So if somebody's listening and they want to check to see if they have any issues with their feet, what do they look for?
Well, here's an easy way to assess, okay? Because one of the most common things I find, again, in my assessments, it's just, I like talking about what I see a lot. They've got no toe control. They can't control their toes. So if you ask them to lift both of their big toes, which is a movement controlled by a specific muscle of the lower leg, sometimes they can't even lift them independently. They have to lift everything else together. And then again, you can lift all other fours and keep your big toes down. Again, that's a different muscle, and it's a different muscle keeping your big toe down. So, and again, they can't do it. It's like, what they end up doing sometimes is like squeeze their hands or like this, trying to move their toes. And it's just because the connection with the brain is so off, or it's been numbed or disconnected, they have to move everything as one big block. So again, you know that whenever that foot lands, instead of the toes gripping the ground as they should, it's probably going all over the place and then, shifting or going into the knee or going to the hip above. So just see if you can lift both of your big toes while keeping the others down, and then keeping your big toes down, lifting all the others. That's one of the things I do in my assessments.
What causes a lot of this? Is it wearing shoes all day long?
It's modern shoes and inactive lifestyles. Because again, if you're sitting all day, if you're not doing anything, there's never any weight on your feet, or there's rarely any weight. And when you do have weight on your feet, a lot of it is taken by the shoe structure that you have. So a lot of shoes have fake arch support, so they've got the support for you. But what does that do? It's like a chair. it just removes all the muscles and all the tissues involved in your arches. It makes them lazy, weaker. So shoes perpetuate this, and inactive lifestyle make it that they're never bearing any weight. So it's like, just like any other muscle, they'll get weaker and weaker. And also never being barefoot, right? We're always in socks or shoes, and you've got hundreds of thousands of sensors in the skin of your soles. And they're so underwhelmed because the only thing they're ever exposed to is cotton, from socks or whatever. So try to walk on grass, on gravel, expose your soles to different textures just to stimulate the bottom of your foot and sort of animate the whole connection from top down.
Yeah, that's one of the huge reasons why I personally am always barefoot, and why I recommend everybody be barefoot, for the just strengthening your feet. And this also is good for proprioception too, and balance. Like, if you struggle to squat, if you struggle to do a single leg deadlift, a lot of that is probably because you lack balance and the stabilization muscles in the feet. So by working out barefoot, or just starting, walking around barefoot, at least in your house, outside too, for the grounding effects is really important. You'll notice that your feet start to become stronger, and you are able to move your toes all these different ways. They shouldn't be boxed in these foot prisons all day.
Yeah. No, prisons is the right word.
Yeah.
And I see it, man. The feet are just, might as well be a different part, from a different body. They're not even connected to the system anymore. They're just there. And if they're not wearing shoes, the foot is all over the place. So, and it's such an advanced, I don't want to say technology, but the design of the foot is incredible. You got 33 joints, you've got hundreds of tissues there. It's like, there's a lot going on.
Man, we talked about a lot of good stuff today. If you could give one piece of advice for people to follow, what would it be?
Fix your sleep, or improve your sleep. If your sleep doesn't need fixing, it could probably be improved, and everything else, the universe will open up to you when you do. Everything will fall into place. So make sleep your priority, and then you'll see that all the body composition goals that you have will come easier if you make decisions based on your sleep instead of your fitness, what you look like.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on the body composition part of poor sleep, the imbalance in leptin and ghrelin levels, and the poor decision making when you're sleep deprived. And yeah. So he's right, guys. So if people want to find out more about you, what you do, and your personal coaching, where can we find you?
Onlineschoolofexercise.com. That's the website. And then I'm very active on Twitter at mythoughtfood.
And is there a specific type of person that you work with?
It's very varied, because sometimes it's advanced people who are now beginners again because they have pain and they can't progress past where they've been, or it's people that have never exercised before and they have to get it together. They're 30, 40, 50 years old and they're starting to get signs that things are breaking down. So it's really about the body. How can, what does somebody need, and how can exercise help them? So yeah, it's pretty varied, but a lot of them are in pain. That's what they have in common.
Unfortunately, it takes people being in pain a lot of time before they realize that they need to take action.
It's a wake-up call.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's just the way that it goes sometimes. So hopefully, if you guys are listening right now and you notice that you have either a valgus knee, which is when your knee caves inward, like when you squat or when you go upstairs or something, or you have bad feet, or you start to notice some of these things, you reach out to Alex now, as opposed to waiting to when something's broken or when your lower back pain is killing you and you can't bear it anymore. So take advantage of this, guys, and links to everything that we mentioned and where to find Alex will be in the show notes. And for everybody listening, thanks again. And don't forget, live the captain's lifestyle. Alex, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Taylor. It was a pleasure.